Zoom did not have us live that whole time. So I think now it's showing us live. Well, that's so weird. Thanks to Zoom for doing very bizarre things of going live, not live. I don't know. Anyway, but here we are live. Chris, Noah, everybody else who's here in the chat, just drop a note to say hi. You missed our updates, but that's a reason. There we go. That is a reason to subscribe to the podcast and catch the full version in the audio form. So go to futurebelongstocreators.com.
The TLDR is, just for a little cliffhanger, I went on vacation last week, and you can find out what I did in the audio. And Nathan caught foxes and rehomed them outside of the city. So find out more about our adventures on vacation and fox hunting, or rather fox relocating.
Yeah, the foxes are alive and well. Oh, man.
Maybe not.
Yeah, no, not so much.
Anyways,
all right.
I do have to share this one quick.
Okay, do it.
For everyone who's live, this one's a little bonus for you. So we were staying right on the river in Bend, and the backyard of this little place, it's a little place, 2 bedrooms. Zillow listed at $1.2 million because it's on the river. Anyways, I digress. Wow. So fenced in backyard. The back side of the yard is the river. And we're like, great, the dogs can go outside. Like, it's a dog-friendly Airbnb and everything. And the first day, my younger dog, Zoe, she's not that little. She's a pit bull German Shepherd mix, very curious. She jumps into the water, swims a little bit, and comes back in. It's like, okay, perfect. That's exactly what we want. Tire yourself out. You'll go to sleep well. You won't be all crazy. Well, the next day we get up. This was last Thursday. And I'm on the phone with my parent, or on FaceTime with my parents, showing them my kid. Nicole's down by the water with our dogs, and the younger dog is barking at algae floating by. Decides to jump in after the algae. She looks up and she sees geese all the way across the river. And she's like, I'm going to kill you, geese. And she swims all the way across the river, no life jacket, no nothing. And we're like, okay, this is not good. And then she keeps swimming, chasing the geese. And we're like, oh my God, she's going to drown. She is not even registering what's happening right now because she is so focused. And then I'm holding a piece of bait. I set the kid down because Nicole's hollering. She's scared. And I run down to the water and I'm holding a piece of bacon. Zoe, come on. She looks back over at one point. She's like, oh my God, they are so far away. And she starts getting tired. So she starts swimming across and she's just sinking lower. And she's like, oh my God, we're going to be a 1-dog household. Finally, she gets back across the river, 3 houses down. I'm like, Zoe, get over here. Come here. Come on. And she's like, I'm not coming near you if you're that mad. And I got the bacon. And she comes to the next house over. It's a really nice house, even bigger, probably even more expensive. And she gets out on their dock. I'm like, okay, well, this is good. She didn't drown. But now she runs up in their backyard and they have a bunch of kids staying there, and she's a little bit anxious, and she's usually very friendly, but sometimes she gets a little freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, she's going to bite a kid. What's going to happen? Now, my wife had been inside getting her bathing suit on in case, I don't know what she was going to do, swim out and try and save the dog. And she goes around to the front and asks the people, can I go in your backyard? My dog's back there. And she walks in the backyard, and you will never guess what the dog is doing. The dog is swimming in their hot tub.
Well, yeah, after you swam in the river, you got to work out in. What more do you want besides just hopping in a hot tub and chilling back?
She did a little cold plunge in the river, a little hot plunge in the hot tub, and we captured her. And she is alive and well, but barely. So from then on, for the rest of the week, she only went in the backyard on a leash and swam on a leash. And that is my story, and I'm sticking to it. Anyways, welcome back to The Future Belongs to Creators. This is the show for how to earn a living online and how to save dogs from drowning.
All right. Well, with that, so Barrett, take us through. We'll kind of switch and play dual roles, right? Between as an individual creator and as someone running a software company. What does that process look like? 6 months in, you've wrapped up June, you're into July, and you're saying, okay, I have these end of the year goals. I also have this progress that I've made to date. What questions do you ask first?
Yeah. So I'll touch on it kind of from the company and the personal side, because I think the intersection of the two is probably most relevant to creators. Because in some ways, like your personal goals end up being your career goals as a creator, because you're usually just one person running your thing. What I do throughout the year and what we try to do throughout the year is to track our progress as we go. So, like for me personally, I have a list of habits that I'm trying to maintain that I think will get me to the long-term goals that I have in my head. And so that might be like read a book a week, or watch a documentary film a week, work out 3 times a week, something like that. And every day I have a journal I keep that's right by my sink in our bathroom. And I just write down what I did that day. And I star the ones that are related to the habits for the year. So from that side, one of the things I'm asking at the middle of the year is, well, just what did I do? Did I follow through on my habits? And typically what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll do an inventory. How many workouts, how many movies, I'll list the movies. How many books have I read? I'll list the books. How many times did we go to church? How many date nights did we do together? There's like a list of habits across 7 areas of my life. And I'll use that and I'll look at it against kind of what the ideal was. And I'll just say, all right, well, what went well? Which of these habits did I maintain and why? What led me to being able to maintain them? And then on the flip side, well, what didn't go quite as well? And why wasn't I able to maintain them? And, was maybe mental health or the pandemic getting in the way of me working out, or was having a kid and my in-laws living with us, does that prevent us from doing date night as intentionally? And we just kind of like do family dinner all the time. And so we need to be more intentional, whatever. So I'll do an analysis. What went well? What didn't go well? And then that last question is, what do I want to change so that I get back on track? So if we parlay that into the company side, it's very similar, actually. We have a strategic plan we set for the year. Out of that strategic plan comes OKRs. We've talked about OKRs a little bit. I think we still owe y'all an episode in terms of how to use OKRs as a creator. But we look at our OKRs for the year. And if we've done our jobs well, at the end of each quarter, each of our team leaders, the directors, as we call them, have written a summary post for each quarter. So in March, at the end of March, they'll write a summary of how their team did. And then at the end of June. And the combination of those things tells us a lot about the kind of meat and potatoes of how well we did against our OKRs for the year. It doesn't map exactly because no one team can control the high level goals on their own. But typically it gives us the component parts to be able to see, are we on track? And there's a difference between being on trajectory versus being exactly halfway to your goals. Right. So like an example of that is we want 500,000 users on our free plan this year as a company. And I think we had just north of 100,000, or actually we want 500,000 total users of ConvertKit. And at the end of the first half of the year, we had between 130 and 150, something like that. And so we're not on track in the sense that we're not halfway, we're not to 250,000, but we are on a trajectory that can still get us there if the trajectory continues. If it stays a little bit more flat and kind of levels out from here, now we know we're in trouble. So anyways, we look and we ask ourselves, how did we do against each OKR? Just what's the facts of the matter? Then we say, what went well? What didn't go well? And what do we want to change going forward? Or what strategic changes do we need to make in order to get on track to hit our goals?
Yeah. And that's a really good process, because checking in on that lets you really see, okay, where are we at with enough time to make changes? And then you don't say, I don't know, delusional is a little too strong of a word, but you don't kid yourself about being like, oh yeah, no, this is still totally possible. And you break it down and go, I don't know that it is. So things that we would set as goals, and I'd love for everyone tuning in, like drop some of your end of the year goals in the chat, and then tell us how you're trending against them as you check in. Are they working? So that could be a business goal. It could be a habit, something like that. So I'll share 2 that I'm thinking about. One is as a creator, I would always have revenue goals. ConvertKit has revenue goals. If anyone's curious, we're pushing for 28 million in annual recurring revenue this year. We're trending more towards 26 million. So that's something that we'd check in on, of like, okay, we're not there. What needs to change in order to close that gap? But as an individual creator, right, I would be saying, okay, I want to have this many ebook sales. I'm expecting to do $75,000 in revenue this year, broken down into buckets, right? So don't just look at the top line number, look at the buckets of like, okay, Most of that was going to come from ebooks, a portion from courses, and then maybe $10,000 was going to come from these in-person workshops. And you can see, okay, how am I doing? Well, I haven't done the workshop yet, so of course that revenue is not there. So there's that side of it on the goals side. And the other side is really what you touched on as far as the habits. That's something that the evaluation that I did this weekend. I've got habits around, or goals that I'm trying to turn into habits, I guess, of books read, how I eat, the amount that I work out, those sort of things. So I realized that, I was staying on track pretty well with working out, even through like the pandemic and, all of that. But then even just like the last 2 weeks, I totally dropped off. I think I stopped playing soccer. Like I played soccer for this little window as like everything opened up, and then cases just got absolutely absurd here in Boise. And I was like, nope, not going to be there again. And so I think I got kind of just disappointed when that stopped. And so I like dropped that working out habit. And so, that was one that like I checked back in on. I got to work out it on Saturday. I got to work on it in this morning, and we're back on track. So those are kind of those habits. Let's see. Ken's mentioning that, the trajectory minded check-in is good. Adam's saying a goal to be able to do 20 overhand pull-ups in one set by the end of the year. Progress currently 12 out of 20. That's good. That's actually was one of my goals, and that's one that I can now do, which is pretty fun. I got 22. I can do 22 reverse grip, 20 forward grip. There's like a slight kip on those last, those last 2 pull-ups, but otherwise we're getting there.
What else would you? We'll count.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought I'd share a little bit about like the format, because I tend to do the first half review. If I'm really on my game, I'll do a quarterly review for the whole company. I thought I'd share a little bit about the format that I use there, and then maybe we can talk through a couple of the things that we're actually talking about trying to change trajectory on, so that we can use those as examples for how creators can think about changing their own trajectories. Okay. So I probably won't screen share this, I don't think, but
you're doing the quick check to see what all is in that document.
Give you a walkthrough of just how I format our first half review, and it seemed to be an effective way to communicate. So we have, I believe, 5 objectives for the year. Again, we use a goal setting system called OKRs, if you want to look that up and learn a little bit more about it. And I list each objective and big heading, and then I list each key result, and I list it as we set it. And then I list what we've done either most recently in June or averaged over the first part of the year, depending on whether it's an average that we're measuring or a point in time that we're measuring. I also add some visuals where appropriate of the graphs that show our trajectory for each of those key results. And so that's kind of just like the one piece is, what are the objectives? What are the key results? And what did we do against them? And then I add just a little section of commentary. And the commentary is kind of answering those 2 questions. What went well? What didn't go well? And maybe a little bit about if we were still to hit our goal, what would need to be different or what would need to continue to be true. And so you kind of get this format where you have objective, key results, commentary, objective, key results, commentary, objective, key results, commentary, all the way down the 5. And that's all it is. There's no like fluffy lead in. There's no fluffy outro or anything like that. It just gives the team what they need to know about where we are and some analysis of what needs to be true for us to continue moving towards our goals for the end of the year. And what I found to be really great about that is I think we all have a sense that we know what's going on in our business at all times. Like, yeah, I know what's going on for sure. Like I have a pretty good sense. But until you really sit down and you look at what was I trying to do and what actually happened, until you really do that, I don't think you really know what's going on in your business, because it's easy for a number to be over here and a number to be over there and a number to be over there, and never to bring it all together to say, is this working as we intended? And my like high level assessment of our first half of the year at ConvertKit is, well, we're doing better than we've done in the past, maybe, but we're not hitting the trajectory that we hoped for this year. And so I would call that we're making incremental improvements. I think about that as like process improvements, things that improve efficiency, things that make us work smarter, not harder, but we're not necessarily we're doing this, which is what we've always done, but we're trying to do this year. And this is working. And this leads to a good business. Like, we will be happy long-term with this. This leads to really exciting stuff that causes us to grow. And that's like really challenging to us. And that's why we set our goals that way. So what we're trying to analyze now, and what I think we can get into some, is how do we close this gap? How do we go from doing this of, let's call it 2.5 to 3% monthly growth to 5 to 10% monthly growth every month? And what is not working that we need to change in order to get there? That's really where the fruitful conversation is. And as a creator, I think having a group like a mastermind group or some peers or even just one other person that you can sit down and talk this through with, or a business coach, can give you some really great just room to talk it out. Sometimes you just have to talk out what's not working and why results aren't what you hope they were, or why they are working on the flip side of things, so that you can continue doing what's led to success so far. So Nathan, as you kind of read through that post and you looked at the first half of our year, what were a couple of your takeaways on places where we're missing our trajectory?
Yeah. So, I mean, the highest level is we clearly identified what our single biggest goal for the year is. And that's an area that it can be really easy to get caught up in, of doing, we have priorities, of which there are 5, it's really important to know, like, okay, but if you could only pick one to accomplish, what's the most important? And so, we were saying we're trying to grow our user base to 500,000, free and paid users, not because there's something special about 500,000, but because it shows that we have fundamentally changed the trajectory on which we're growing the company. So that was one where, it was really important for us to realize, like, okay, we are on track if we do the same thing in the second half of the year that we did in the first half of the year to hit something like 280, 290,000 users. And so it's really important to identify right away, okay, are we okay with that? We have new information now. A lot has changed, right? When we planned for the year, we didn't expect COVID. We didn't expect any of this stuff. So are we okay with that change? That's a legitimate question to ask. Don't just think that because you wrote something down on a piece of paper 6 months ago or a year ago, it should still be true today. But if you're like, no, I think that should still be possible, I think we're capable of it, then it's really diving into, okay, well, what has to change? Maybe it's looking at those other 4 priorities that you wrote down and said, okay, what do I need to say no to? What else is on here that if I'd be willing to sacrifice this in order to get this number 1 priority? And so those are like the conversations that we're having. And then another question that I love is, what would have to be true? And we ask this all the way along. Whenever we dream up something big, we're like, what would have to be true to achieve this? But then now later, 6 months in, we're like, okay, now what would have to be true in order to get back on the trajectory in order to do this? So examples would look like, we have to increase site traffic by X%. We have to increase our visitor to free account created conversion rate. And so marking those out, right? It's easy as a creator to be like, hey, we're not on track for our revenue goal or whatever the top line metric is. But you really have to break it down when that happens and work backwards and say, okay, what are the component parts? We're clearly not getting in front of enough people. I'm going to pick on Basecamp for a second. There are companies, Basecamp and others, who say, like, we don't do goals. We don't track these metrics. And that's easy when you don't have these ambitions, or you don't have these things you're trying to hit, or like it's always come easily. If it's always come easily for you, like, that's the person who's like, I don't count calories, I'm just always perfectly fit. It's like, okay, well, that's great for you. But, in my case, like, I count calories, I have specific goals and I'm working towards it. It doesn't come naturally. And so it's really important when that happens to break it down and to go to the component parts and say, okay, is our traffic there? Is our sales there? Is the email list growing like I expect it to? And basically get down to those narrow parts when the top line number is not where you want it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we're also careful to, especially between you and I, have conversations about is, like, we asked the question, all right, a year ago, if before we set the strategy for the year, if I had told you could have 250 or 300,000 users of ConvertKit by the end of 2020, how would that have felt? Mm-hmm. And like, honestly, that would feel pretty good a year ago.
Yes.
before we had the strategy for this year. And so I think there's a balance between, you don't have to be unhappy with what you have in order to be ambitious about what you want. That's a pretty good quote. You don't have to be unhappy with what you have to be ambitious about what you want. And I think we're trying to be happy with what we have and happy with the team and the business and the growth that we have, while being ambitious about where we want to go and what we're capable of, and finding out what we can achieve together. And so that's really, on one hand, if we end the year on the trajectory we're on, okay, we did pretty good. We made like an increase in what we were capable of, and we've set a good path for the future. But if we can get to 500,000 users, that's an indication to us that we have fundamentally changed something about our business in terms of what is possible going forward. And so one of the things that we talked about is, like you mentioned, traffic. And if you think back to our episode about earning your minimum viable income, it's a very similar concept here. If we start with 500,000 people using the product, and you go to, well, how much traffic do we need to have? It's like, well, I don't know. Let's say we have a 5% conversion rate. It's like, okay, so you need 2.5 million people. No, 25 million people on your website. Hold on, let me do the math. I'm confusing myself. Too many zeros. No, you need 10 million people. Completely off. You need 10 million people to visit your website over the year. And then let's say of the people that hear about your brand, 2% of them visit your website. Maybe that's too low. Maybe it's 4% of them. So you need 250 million people to see the name ConvertKit in order to get the visitors that can become the free users. And so you start to think like, oh man, there's 330 million people or something like that in the US. That's a lot of people. Man, we're operating at this level of scale now where we've really got to change the way we think about how we're trying to market ourselves. And that's going to be different as a creator, right? Like ConvertKit now is reaching that we need to be like a globally recognizable brand in the creator space in order for us to continue to grow the way that we want to over time. For you and your business, you need some number of people. I'd encourage you to go back to that minimum viable income episode and think, what is the number of people I need to be my customer? And then back out. How much traffic and how many people do I need to know that I exist? But I bet it's in the realm of like 75,000 people need to have even heard that you exist, maybe ever. Not ever, but like this year in order for you to reach some of your goals. And then it grows from there as you scale. And so understanding that number for us, 250 million people need to know that we exist, really helps define, okay, what needs to change about the way that we're going to market and the way that we're marketing ourselves as a brand in order to reach new people. And that's one of the key areas that we've recognized is we've got to, it's not just Facebook ads to like a tiny little group of people that are super targeted. It's like Super Bowl ads that reach everyone that might be a creator. And it's convincing people that they should become a creator, not just targeting the people who already consider themselves a creator. So there's all of these new ways we have to think about the business when we look at where we are and where we want to be.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much there, but I want to give a couple like really simple frameworks, for using when you're evaluating or doing a review and looking forward, right? So just a few questions. We already covered, what went well, what didn't go well, and what did I learn? That's kind of the most basic retro format. There's another one that I really like of start, stop, continue. So you're looking at, we kind of did our review and then we're saying, okay, what, we know what happened. And now as we go for the next 6 months, what do we need to start doing? What are we doing right now that we need to stop doing? And then, what's working well that we need to continue doing? There's another one that you might try if it resonates with you is loved, lacked, and longed for. It's just, what did you love about how it went before? What did you lack? And then, what did you long for? What would have made it a more enjoyable time? But I think the most important thing is having that check-in and then really asking yourself, okay, what do I need to say no to? What goals do I need to let go of? What do I need to say no to as far as maybe a podcast appearances or, some of these other things that aren't moving towards the goal? Maybe I'm splitting my effort. Maybe I'm trying to grow my email list to 1,000 subscribers. I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel to 1,000 subscribers and my Twitter following to whatever. Maybe I need to say no to 2 of these and just focus on one of them. And if you do that exercise and write that down, then I think you're going to find that you're in a much better place as far as knowing where you're at now and where you need to end up at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think so too. Honestly, like if I take a step back from this topic for a second, and my voice even takes a step back, I'm getting better with my voice acting over here.
It's so important. I'm so excited to see that on your 2021 goals.
Absolutely. Right alongside how long can my hair get? If you take a step back from this, I just want you to realize that no one does this. Like in the grand scheme of things, no one reads books. No one thinks about their goals. No one, listens to podcasts like this. In the grand scheme of things, like really trying to improve themselves and be really intentional about the progress they make. And so just doing some process will help you get closer to reaching the goals that you want to hit. So that's the first thing is it doesn't have to be perfect. Just sit down. And even if you didn't have goals to start the year, just reflect. What'd you do in the first half of the year? Did it work? Did it not work? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What do you want to change? If you did have goals, even better if you sit down and really review them, because the people who do set goals, that's actually the easy part. A lot of us there's a psychological impact of setting goals and writing them down, first of all. And then secondly, if we share them with other people, number one, you get a little bit of accountability, but only if people actually follow up. Most of the time, what you actually get is the brain endorphins that you would get from achieving them just by sharing them. You get the praise from people. You get the like, oh, wow, look at how ambitious you are from your internal dialogue and from others. And it removes some of the incentive to achieve them. So that's the first thing to realize is just writing them down and sharing them actually isn't enough. The accountability piece, either from yourself or others, is everything in making real progress. And so having the process at all is a major step forward. And then if you can implement a little bit of structure and a little bit of habit around doing it regularly, that'll lead to even more progress over time. And so just realize that there's levels to this stuff. Number one is do it. Number two is use a framework you like. And number three is do it regularly on a cadence that you can trust and follow through on.
Yeah, I think that's so good. What we'd love to do is if you do this check-in and you have some notes or thoughts that you want to share, feel free to email us, just Barrett or Nathan, or Barrett and Nathan at convertkit.com. Send those over, or just come back here in the comments on YouTube. And this is episode 64, and so you'll be able to find it again. But drop it in the comments and say, okay, this is how the review went. This is what I learned, and everything from there.
I can't wait for someone to send an email to Barrett and Nathan at convertkit.com.
In case it was not actually clear, Barrett and I are separate humans with separate email addresses, though maybe we'll make that alias.
Oh man, pretty funny. Okay. Creator of the day.
Oh man, here we go. All right, my creator of the day is actually one of our regular listeners. I'm gonna give a shout out to Teddy Williams. He's got some great writing going on. He's got his audience going. And you should check it out. But let me find, if you head over to his about page, he's got his long form posts that have been coming out fairly regularly. So that's been fun to see. And then he's also done a bunch of Twitter threads, been growing his Twitter audience and talking about how that's been going. And also, side note, if you want to see some great branding work, the Seattle Kraken's team that he's highlighting. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, check out Teddy Williams, jr.com, and follow him there.
Love it. I actually don't think my creator of the day has a website, or at least not that I could easily find. So Nate, if you end up listening or someone sends this to you, you should make a ConvertKit landing page. But anyways, my creator of the day is a person named Nate Blakesley. He wrote a book called American Wolf. I'm going to show you his Amazon page, but you should actually order from your local bookstore because that's better for local economies. And that's what I do. If you don't have a local bookstore, order from pals.com. That's my local bookstore, and I want them to stay open after this pandemic is gone.
Yes.
Let's see. Nate Blakesley wrote this book called American Wolf. And I've always been a wildlife fan. I don't know. I guess I grew up watching Nat Geo and Discovery Channel and all of that, just in love with the animals all around. And I picked this book up randomly off the like staff recommendations shelf at Powell's, the in-person bookstore way back when that was a thing. And it is the story of this one pack in Yellowstone who was descendants of the initially re-released wolves in Yellowstone National Park. And it is remarkable and tragic in some ways. But it sent me down this whole path of rediscovering my love for ecology and nature and animals and conservation, environmentalism, all that kind of stuff. It is remarkable the degree to which ecosystems balance themselves out when we mostly leave them alone. But at this point, actually, we have to rebuild them actively because we've done so much to damage them, especially with large predators. And so if you've never thought about wolves, this book is amazing, and it is entertaining on like a novel level. Oh, it's almost like a historical fiction kind of feel to it, but it's real life about real wolves. And it's led me down this path to a bunch of other books, Wolf Nation and some others. Wolves are essential to ecosystems. And if you're interested in animals, you should read this book. And Nate Blakeslee is the author of it, fantastic writer and journalist. So anyways, check him out. And this is also my resource of the day. If you love animals, you're interested in it, read this book for a little thrill ride on the recovery of wolves in Yellowstone.
Sounds good. All right. My resource, and we'll use it as a closing thought as well. Or we'll dive into that, is Setting the Table by Danny Meyer. So if you don't know Danny, he started a restaurant called Union Square Cafe way back in the day. And then he's gone on to do a bunch of other restaurants, 11 Madison Park, Gramercy Tavern. And then I think the one you probably know the most is a different style, which is Shake Shack. And so the book is all about hospitality and business. And we're really trying to take our customer support and convert it to the next level. And so I thought it'd be a good book to read. So check it out. I'm like 90% of the way through it. I thought I would finish it yesterday at the lake, but I didn't quite get it done. But kind of for a closing thought, I wanted to share one thing from the book. And Danny talks about, as he's been learning to manage and set goals and work towards something, fairly relentlessly. Somebody described his role, as a leader, as a creator, to him in a way that I thought was really interesting. He was talking about how it just felt like everything that he did, people would kind of get it, but then they'd do it their own way or whatever else. And one of his friends who also owned a restaurant said, okay, Danny, we're sitting here at this table, empty restaurant. Clear off everything on this table except for the salt shaker. Take off the, whatever is there, the silverware, the pepper grinder, whatever else, right? We just have a salt shaker. Okay, now it's there. Now, Danny, you're a bit of a perfectionist. Put the salt shaker where you want it. And Danny's like, okay. And he puts it right exactly in the center of the table. And then his friend leans over and moves it just like an inch or so. He goes, okay, put the salt shaker where you want it. And Danny puts it right back in the center of the table. And then his friend goes, okay, cool. And he moves it like all the way to the edge. And put it where you want it. And Danny moves it right back to the center of the table. And his friend starts to explain before he does this too much and getting super annoying. He says, basically, Danny, as a person with vision, as a creator who knows what you're trying to create, you know where you're trying to go. That's your job. The whole world is going to take everything that you're doing and they're going to move it over here and they're going to move it over there. And your job is to just keep bringing it right back to center, right where you want it to be. Yes, it's going to be annoying. Yes, people aren't going to care as much about your vision or how you believe the world should be as you do. And your job isn't to yell at them or to complain or to get really frustrated or anything like that. Your job is just relentlessly over time say, nope, this is my vision. This is the quality with which we do things. This is how it should go. This is my goal for the end of the year. This is what we're marching towards. And just like relentlessly as this like force of nature, just keep realigning on this is what matters. This is what is in line with my values. And this is what I believe in. And that just really resonated with me as we've been building this company, as we've both built our own audiences. Man, there's so much that goes on that just pushes you every which way. And 1 minute you feel like you're on top of the world and you can accomplish anything. And the next minute you feel like, why am I even an entrepreneur? Why am I even doing this? And it's just having that focus of like, nope, I can opt out of all of that. I know what my values are and what I believe in and what I'm trying to build. I'm just going to keep placing that salt shaker in the center of the table again and again. So
I love that. That's awesome. Danny Meyer's awesome. He's like, fantastic. Definitely read the book. I love the takeaway too. It resonates deeply with me.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday with a little Q&A Friday, and we'll see you all later.